Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The Memphis City Council on the surveillance list, police negotiations, and more tonight on Behind the Headlines. Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Berlin Boyd, Chairman of the Memphis City Council. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
Worth Morgan, also from the Memphis City Council. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Kemp Conrad, Memphis City Council. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
And Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. And I'm going to start, there's a lot going on with the surveillance list. I'm going to ask Bill just to do a quick update of what happened this week, where things stand, and then we'll start get your reactions and move on from there. So Bill, what happened this week with the surveillance list?
Well, it's been a busy week. First of all, it's a list that if you're on that list and you come to City Hall, you're required to have a police escort to go wherever you're going in City Hall. Where we are now is that Memphis Police Director Michael Rawlings continues his review of the list and the 81 names on it. He has taken most of those names off of the list. These are the people, most of whom were involved in protest in some way in the last year. So what you're left with is a core list of a couple of dozen people who were probably on the list at least since 2010 for various charges that had come up. Some of them are former employees. They're left on the list. What we have now are two lawsuits related to how the later names came to be on the list, and those two lawsuits are in federal court, and they are alleging that there was police surveillance involved in putting those people on the list, and the lawsuits are based on an allegation that this violates a 1978 consent decree involving police surveillance of protesters. The city has filed its response as of Thursday. The city contends that the lawsuit should be dismissed because that consent decree no longer remains in effect.
All right. Well, so I'll start with you, Mr. Chairman. Your thoughts on this list as you learned about it and what you want to see done, and is the police department going in the right direction, the mayor's office going in the right direction in terms of taking people off this list or not?
You know, I will say this, Eric, one thing for sure, that this council has no authority over any day-to-day operations for City Hall. I said that during our council meeting. We didn't know anything about the list. We found out exactly the same time the general public found out about the list. The one thing that I will say, I think that our attorneys, they have this process rolling. I will await to see the outcome of it. I will say this for the record, just so that people know, I think you should not be placed on a list until you have done an action that will cause you to be on a list. So if you threaten somebody within City Hall, or you threaten an elected official or an employee, then therefore you should be watched. You know, safety matters, and we've seen some workplace violence. But we've also seen people's action based upon social media posts, things that they say about anti-government, anti-police. And I just think you have to be cognitive in today's time to make sure that safety is first. You don't get a do-over if somebody comes in to City Hall with a gun and take lives. Right.
And so, Worth Morgan, you chair the committee, Public Safety Committee, I believe?
I do.
Yeah. And so, in terms, again, I mean, you all don't, the City Council doesn't have direct control, but you all have some, influence over what's going on. You're in City Hall all the time. And I think everyone, I mean, I've heard few, if any, people say that somebody who's got a record, who's maybe, threatened, who's some kind of act of maybe mental illness or violence should be just roaming around City Hall. But people who, for instance, were out protesting for a $15 minimum wage, that's generally the kind of thing we debate at this table, or you all debate, in council. It's not something that involves police involvement. So your reaction to the police spending time, money, resources monitoring people who are in more of a political protest mode?
Yeah, and I think we have to be real careful about the definition of monitoring or surveillance, because if somebody's posting something to social media, for all the public to see, or they're doing something in public in a protest on the street, that's not necessarily, I don't know if I would classify that as surveillance, and then we'd be getting into some legal terms. I think there's been more attention paid to this list, both internally, definitely externally, because no one knew about it, but internally than ever before. And as you see, as they work through it, the majority of the names were removed. And I think we are moving in the right direction. And as we've said last week, and as Chairman Boyd just said, workplace safety is not something that we take lightly. And we do receive, whether it be threats or suggestions of violence. And, so there's not, I don't think anybody is disputing the need or the existence for a list. The question is what criteria lands you on the list and how the police are spending their resources. And that's something that's fair to debate, but you'd almost have to go person by person by person through all 81 names to find that out. And that's not something that's occurred yet.
Yeah, Kemp, your reaction?
First of all, I trust the mayor and Director Rollins and I think the council to get this right. So, these are all very tough jobs, tough calls. It's a fine line, a lot of these things that we have to do and the decisions we have to make. I'll say that I'm in the commercial real estate business and go to big cities, New York, Chicago, Atlanta. And if you compare City Hall kind of security to what you have to go through to go to a big building in New York City, it is night and day. It could be a lot more stringent. So I think there is a very good balance. I think City Hall is very open, but we live in a dangerous day and age, and there are crazy people out there that you can spend a little bit of time on social media and see what some of the people say. And I'll say too that there's a lot of crossover in this various group, the various kind of protest groups. It's a lot of the same people. And some of these people they've been in Nashville, they've disrupted Nashville legislative hearings, and so it's a very fine line. But what would be worse would be the media would be all over us if something were to happen. They say, well, why didn't you have stricter security? Right. So, but good questions have been raised. Collectively, we'll get to the bottom of it, and I think that we'll make the best decision that we can do.
One thing that this has brought up, and Director Rawlings mentioned it at a press conference or somewhere this week, it brings up the question of rules and policies in a world in which there are more and more sky cops going in, more and more body cameras going in. District Attorney Wyrick was on here 6 months ago or something like that, talking about the difficulties of monitoring all this body camera footage and so on. So, I'll go to you, Public Safety Committee. Does the council need to get more involved in saying, look, it's not just these 81 people, or some of whom are coming off the list. It's what are the policies for the police for all this video that's out there, all the body cam, all the sky cop, and what is that line between safety, which everyone wants, and no one wants a terrible incident, and intrusiveness? Yeah,
and Councilman Conrad's absolutely right. It's a very narrow lane they have to operate in between, essentially what some would accuse of violating people's rights and making sure that, on the retroactive end, how did you not see this coming? When it comes to body cams, things like that, we do have policies and procedures in place, and that's an open conversation we have with the state government as well. And we are constantly, I've been at conferences last year where we're talking and looking at what other cities are doing. Now, we've been a bit of a front runner across the nation in terms of, you mentioned a lot of different issues, but I'll stick on body cameras and that footage and privacy concerns. So a lot of this is ground that hasn't been, essentially, we're the front runners on this. We are plowing the road for others, and we're being very careful. I think that was one of the reasons we wanted to roll out the body cam program slowly and make sure that if there were hurdles, that we weren't just blowing through them, but we were being wise and I guess using our resources as best as possible and not wasting everybody's time.
Before I go back to Bill, your thoughts? Again, with this in this world of sky cameras and sky cops and more video surveillance by the police, do you think there are enough rules and policies in place, or does the city council need to get more involved in that?
I think we're taking it as an as-needed basis. It's new technology. We're having more public people requesting for SkyCop cameras. So I think it's as needed. It's just trial and error. And I think we're doing a good job so far figuring it out as we go.
Okay. Bill.
Realizing that much of our discussion has dealt with the dividing line between what the council oversees and what the executive branch and the mayor oversees, I'd like to ask you all about the line between political surveillance and public safety surveillance, because that seems to be where this is going to fall, or where much of the discussion is going to be. Is that a distinction? Is that a legitimate distinction, do you think?
I definitely believe that it is, Bill, simply because, as my colleague, Councilman Morgan, just mentioned, you don't know half the threats, half the letters, half the notes, half the things we may get in our mailbox with no return address. It's a very dangerous position to be in. People can say you don't vote the way I want you to vote, and now they hate you. They send you hate mail. So I definitely believe it's a fine line. You know, those protesters took it to a different level by going to the mayor's home, personal space, and to perform a die-in. That's what City Hall is for. If you have an issue with your mayor, have an issue with the council, take it to City Hall and express your concerns. But when you go to someone's home, you have taken it to another level. You're not only posing a threat to the mayor, you're posing a threat to his family.
Kemp, do you think there's a distinction to be made here between political surveillance and watching people for the purposes of public safety?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a distinction. I mean, the interesting thing now is on social media. I mean, you know, there's so much out there, and you know, again, I think a lot of the people that are protesting, that are the issue, they're a lot of the same people in the same groups, but I do think there's a distinction that has to be made.
And Worth, your view on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is almost a constitutional question. And my first call would be to the lawyers and say, all right, where is the line? We don't want to do anything as a government, as a legislative body. We don't want to do anything illegal, but we do want to make sure we're doing everything that's practical and wise to protect ourselves and our employees.
Yeah, we talk about police, and we'll move. It's contract time with the police, and a couple things happened this week. Bill, maybe I'll get you to tell us where we are in the negotiations with the union contract and this grant that came from the Crime Commission. So why don't you give us a little update?
I would say just one thing too.
Sure.
I mean, you know, we had an issue at Valero where people cemented themselves into barrels. I mean, who knows what could have been in those barrels? I mean,
and some of them ended up on this list.
And some of the people there are the same ones that we see at City Hall that time after time, whether it's this group or that group. Again, it's a lot of the same people. It costs the taxpayers millions of dollars. It's very, very dangerous, the things that could have happened. And so, and I would imagine some of the ones that were looking in the mayor's house in their window at 5 a.m. So this is serious stuff. And those are I think the ones that really have to be watched. And you have to draw a distinction between that, totally going over the line, blocking an oil refinery where we don't know if there's what's in the barrels, and people that are just protesting, which obviously people should have the right to do. So, and I think Memphians and people are smart enough to know the difference between going in the mayor's yard in the morning, looking in on his family.
But is part of it then, we'll stay on this for a second, is part of it then not so much that these people, okay, let's give you that for a second, but that the list was secret and it wasn't clear that people knew they were on it, and the kind of the lack of a sort of disclosure and transparency about the list and the unclear criteria. Is that part of what I think what I've heard people respond to?
Yeah, I mean, that's valid.
There weren't policies in place, there weren't procedures in place, that because it was a mysterious list that, who's on the list, are there other lists, that kind of thing. That was poorly handled, I think.
And how did being on the list actually affect you is another question. Because if people are on a list and they didn't even know about it, you could have some questions about the actual effect of it.
Right. And then to clarify, some of the people who were on the list didn't do some of these things. I mean, so it was a very ad hoc. It was a very ad hoc is the nice way to put it.
Yes. Right. I mean, after the December die-in on the lawn, the mayor went to the police, and the police said, yeah, we think you should sign an authorization of agency, which is basically a no trespassing list. But then he left the names that were to be on the list to the police. And it wound up being, I think, something like 30 people, when the protest was a dozen people at the most.
Right.
And so he didn't know how the names got on the list for his property. And then he didn't know that the police had automatically taken those lists and had said, okay, they're also on the City Hall list.
Yeah.
As well.
So. Let's move to, still with police, but it is union contract negotiation time, and there was a grant from the Crime Commission to the city for retention bonuses. Give us a quick update on where we are. We'll get reactions from this.
Tuesday, the formal contract negotiations started. This was the day after the Memphis Shelby Crime Commission announced a $6.1 million grant to the city of Memphis, and Mayor Strickland announced that money would be used over a 4-year period for retention bonuses for Memphis police officers as part of the effort to have a net gain in the number of police officers and a force of approximately 2,300 officers.
Conrad, in the past, you've butted heads some with the union. I remember, I don't know, some years ago when a lot of the cuts were on, you were on the show with Mike Williams, head of the police union. Your take right now on the police union's reaction to, they don't like that these retention bonuses, to them, they are outside the purview or outside the contract. The billboards are up again in terms of, talking about Memphis not being a safe city. Your reaction to the way the union is reacting right now?
Well, I just think it's unfortunate that once again, the city has come up with a way to pay police officers more, and for some reason, the leadership of the police union, doesn't like that. It reminds me of a couple years ago on the council when we wanted to give the police officers a raise 6 months, earlier, and then was discussed, and the police union was against that. So I don't know how a police officer would want to wait 6 months to get a raise, or would not want this money and these raises and these retention bonuses that people have worked really hard to put together. That doesn't make sense to me. And I think at the end of the day, we're trying to do what's right for the city and what's right for law enforcement. And I think all you have to do is look at the billboards and see what the police union is doing. And that's not in Memphians' best interest. It's not in the police officers' best interest. It's really about them. And what we're trying to do is make Memphis a great city, make it safe. And how police union leadership would be against this, it's beyond me.
Berlin Boy, this will be your first round. Obviously, you just became chairman some months ago. Your thoughts on how this negotiation is going, how the union is reacting?
I think the way the union is reacting right now is very immature. And I say that, because of the reason, if you look at across the country, the way things are going, it's tough to recruit police officers. We're just trying to find innovative ways to offer more money, incentivize them. I will say that they keep saying, well, bring the benefits back, bring the pension back. Well, I doubt if that ever happens. However, I will say, if you look at Dallas, Texas right now, they're facing a possible filing bankruptcy because of their pension system. Right. It's a thing of the past. I just think it's something that our police association should try to work well with the administration, because we really have their best interests at heart.
We have police officers coming back from Dallas now. And let's not forget that recently the police union actually helped set up recruiting fairs for other cities to come in. What would happen, if at FedEx, an employee at FedEx had a recruiting fair for UPS to come in and hire away? It's unbelievable. Yeah. Right. So I'm hopeful that this administration will take action on this kind of behavior that's counterproductive to the health of the city of Memphis.
I think the three of us are in agreement that recent actions of the police association have been both unproductive and unprofessional. And remember, this is a grant. I mean, this is a gift to the city, and it totals about $1.6 million a year. And what they're asking for, just is a completely different scale in terms of size of a cost between $40 and $55 million versus this grant, which is 1.6. Yeah. And to say anything that's beneficial to the police officers, that's not exactly what they're asking for, is a slap in the face, is stunning.
Yeah. Bill, go ahead. And Bill, do you know, I'm going to put you on the spot, where does that money come? The Crime Commission, I didn't know they had a funding ability. I didn't know they had funds behind them.
The money, according to the Crime Commission, comes from private donors. Okay. Okay. And that leads me to my question. Do you think that private donors putting up money for a specific purpose, in this case for retention bonuses, does that usurp the council's authority in any way, in your opinion?
In which way? Usurp our authority?
Well, I think it's all subject to the budget. I mean, I think ultimately it's going to come to the council. And we're going to have to approve it.
Accept the grant.
We have to accept the grant funds.
So no, it doesn't. It's on Tuesday's agenda. We have to accept it. It's in Worth Committee. But I don't think it circumvents. I think it helps. I think it's the citizens' responsibility as well as taxpayers' responsibility to find any ways that they can help assist us in funding.
Yeah, this is a great example of what a generous city Memphis is. So, I mean, I want to publicly thank the people, the individuals, the companies that stepped up and gave this money. Thank you for this. It's going to make Memphis safer. So look at the Harahan Bridge. Look at, just down the street here at Shelby Farms. I mean, there's so many good things going on in Memphis, and a lot of people working hard. None of us are perfect at what we do. We all have tough jobs. We're making great strides on a lot of different fronts. Unemployment's, jobs coming back in, parkland, green space, And then you get people throwing up these billboards. And I hope that really illustrates the contrast between people of goodwill that are trying to move the city forward and people that are just trying to serve their own selfish interests and really just trying to pull Memphis backwards.
We'll move on. We have about 8 minutes left here, 7 minutes left. To de-annexation was a huge issue about this time last year.
Yes.
When the legislature was trying to push to wholesale kind of de-annexation, the city of Memphis, chamber, others got together, business community got together and fought it, talking about a loss of huge amounts of population and revenue. The mayor rolled out a plan a week or two ago that de-annexes a number of areas. And it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, you guys would hear more than I would, that the issue, that it's been very well received because the issue has kind of died down. Your thoughts on the mayor's plan, and have you heard from constituents? I don't think it's in your district, but have you heard from residents? One little area, okay. Have you heard from residents, from citizens saying, this is terrible, this is great? What?
You know, the constituents in which I represent in the inner city, they think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's $8.5 million worth of revenue potential loss to us. The thing that I have issues with on the consent decrees of those areas we annex, we did it within our legal purview, and we did everything legally. My biggest issue is I don't mind de-annexing areas if we can get a return on our overall capital investment that we put in those areas. If we cannot recoup our capital investment, you know, I don't think the inner city can afford to just hand over gifts to these annex areas. And to hear some of the people out there say, well, we didn't know. If you look at your consent decree, half of them knew they were buying homes in annex reserve areas. So until we can show how we're going to recoup our investment, I'm on the fence as I can't support it.
Because the mayor's proposal will have to go through city council, right?
It does.
It has to be voted on by you all to let those areas go. That does not take an act of the legislature. Is that correct?
Correct.
But to get the money back would, right? There's no mechanism in state law right now to recoup that money, but that potentially could be done up in Nashville. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is an evolving issue. And in a lot of ways, we're entirely relying on what happens in Nashville. What they do could change the landscape in Memphis very quickly. We were all up in, I think, Nashville last year. You were there too.
I was there. I'm there often.
Yeah, lobbying on the issue. And there's a smart way and an honest, good conversation to have about what is the right size of Memphis and trying to do it from a practical point of view that doesn't just shift tax dollars to the county or, you know, from the county, or if we de-annex, you know, in a poor way, I think, which could have happened last year if the state had gotten their way, we could have seen taxes going up in the city and in the county. And that doesn't make sense. That's a foolish way to govern. And I think there's a fair, good discussion to have on this, and it's still evolving. But I don't buy into the argument that the city was in the wrong or immoral about how we went about annexation the first time. I don't buy that argument.
We followed state law.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
it went
but a lot
through,
of people have talked about people.
And it went through the court system.
Right.
And,
Advocates for this. I mean, this is one of the, if not the physically largest cities in the country. It grew too much, a lot of people say, so that some amount of appropriate right sizing is what people have talked about could make sense. Okay.
Right.
With just a few minutes left, Bill.
So Berlin, I think the area in your district is one where actually 3 people live there.
And deer.
And deer, yes. It's a pretty heavily wooded area, and it includes the police academy.
Right.
Don't tell Reed that. Don't tell Hedgepeth.
So regardless of how many people live there, though, is that an area where we invested, like in sewers and things like that?
You know, the infrastructure there is really minuscule. I don't mind letting that area go. Let Shelby County take care of the deer and the trees and the water. I mean, it's a very small area in which we put infrastructure in. So those areas like out in Eads, for example.
And southwest Memphis.
You know, it's about 16 homes. Our trustee lives out there. Let the county, they can have those 15 homes. But I think there are some practical areas. You know, the one thing that I will say, Memphis did a poor job with trying to annex itself out of debt. So it didn't work. So it gave the taxpayers more responsibility. However, like my colleague just said, we did it within our legal, we did it within the law. We didn't break any laws by annexing these areas. So why should we be forced by the state, our great friends, to give it up?
Kemp, so should we give up Southwind? Should we give up South Cordova? Which actually the Cordova area is a little bigger than the recently annexed area and includes some areas of Cordova that the city annexed maybe 30 years ago.
I still have an open mind on it. I agree with with my friend Chairman Boyd here. I mean, the city can't come out of this with a net loss. I mean, it can't be worse for the city of Memphis. That would be a bit of a dereliction of duty on our part, I think. So I still have an open mind about it. I do think that over time the city grew too much, too fast. You know, it's expensive to deliver services. We need more density. But you know, the city has to at least come out ahead or even on the deal. And I think based on how it is right now, I don't think that we do. So
yeah, a minute left, and not near enough time for this. But I'll go to the chairman on one last thing. Wait, I'm going to go just for a minute left here. Beale Street. I'm cutting off Kemp Conrad. I apologize. Beale Street. Yeah, exactly. Does the council need to get more involved in what's going on at Beale Street?
I think there are litigations going on right now. I will say that we have put contingencies for the council's budget, legal contingencies. So we're just going to sit back, listen to the arguments. It's keep coming back before the Economic Development Committee. I think it's interesting. It's a lot to deal with, but I think for the most part, we'll let the lawyers decide.
All right, and I'll go back to Kemp. I'll give him his last.
Well, no, I think it's interesting. You know, people that bought houses knew where they were buying houses in the city of Memphis. Yes, yeah. And you know, I bet all the people that don't want to be in Memphis, I bet they love to go to the Grizzly games. I bet they love to go downtown. I bet they love. Okay. And so it's, you know, it just strikes me as a little interesting. People don't want to be in Memphis, but they want to realize all the benefits of Memphis. They're flying out of our airport.
We'll give you the last word today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Good night.
Yeah.